Hello, and welcome to Treasury Talks, where we speak with thought leaders from around the country and right here in our hometowns. Today, I have with me Treasurer Sims of Wilmington. He is the city treasurer, and we are delighted to have him with us today. Thank you so much for coming. And sort of being with me to have this discussion. Can you kind of just start with a little bit about your background and sort of how you came to be the city treasurer?
That's a great question. And first and foremost, thank you for having me, Treasurer Davis. I mean, you've had a pretty impressive roster as I look through some of the previous Treasury Talks. So indeed, I feel honored and it's a pleasure. So thank you for having me. And cheers to you and your team for pulling this all together. I've been following you on your Instagram page and some of your social media presence and your commitment to the community and to our city and our state and engaging them through avenues and mediums just like this are critical. And so, again, I appreciate the invitation and happy to be here. So a bit about my background on a personal note. Many folks may not know I'm a native New Yorker, but I've been living here. I consider myself a Delawarean. I've been coming to the state of Delaware since the early 90s, 1991, I believe to be exact. And I've been living here for 20 years. And so, I've raised my daughters here, two girls here in the city, and of course, been living in the city for quite some time. So Delaware is near and dear to my heart for many reasons, as you might imagine. But the early origins were in New York City, growing up to a wonderful set of parents, William and Alma Sims, older sibling as well. And I come from a family, I mention them because I really do come from a family of service. And so it's been, my father was a civil servant for almost 30 years in New York City. My mom was the neighborhood mom, and all about really servicing the community. She was a community activist and advocate on behalf of children. So it's been in my blood. My first jobs were in service, right? And so for me, it's really a big part of who I am as a person and my family's story here in America, quite candidly. Moving on from there, really, from a professional standpoint, most of my career has been in some capacity of service as well. Primarily, though, on the private and corporate side of business. So the immediate position I held before coming into the treasurer's office was actually working here in the city on behalf of the City of Wilmington small businesses, really helping them from an economic development standpoint for the last 2.5 years prior to taking over the office of treasurer, with a focus primarily on small and minority-owned business. Bit of a misnomer, right, Treasurer Davis? You probably are very well aware. When you say small business, based on the Small Business Administration standards, we're talking any business with revenues of $5 million and under generally, right? So relatively small. So focus though, right, on those businesses, helping them really drive their business results, grow their business, establish businesses here in the city. And of course, as everyone knows, really, particularly in last year, helping them really navigate some difficult financial times due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Prior to that, I was working in Citigroup for the last 14 years prior to that, in a number of capacities, doing treasury operations, as well as client management and portfolio management. And that was a wonderful ride, it really, really was. Did I anticipate that would lead me to public service? No, but I'm sure we'll get into that as well.
I love that it's in your DNA and that sort of, remained true to that mission of service, right? And I think that in that way, it truly translates into the position that you're in right now. How would you say that your background helped to shape you to become that true public servant? And what drives you to serve in this way? To be that entrepreneur maker, that business support, and really to look to finance to serve.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I love working with people. It's one of the gifts that I'm proud to say that I have and been blessed with. But I come from a family like that, right? I come from a big family where we were encouraged to find our talents. We were encouraged to develop our personalities. And quite candidly, we were encouraged to be community leaders and activists and help people. Some very basic tenets, that your community is important. And so you should find something that you're passionate about and get involved and help. And so that really has been a mantra for me before I even realized that was the the ecosystem that I was living in, right? I'm just following mom, dad, my brother,
Yeah.
folks. I'm doing what they do, what my aunts, uncles, my grandparents taught us to do. That said, as you grow older and you become much more aware of who you are as an individual, it was very intentional for me to make sure that I make my community better wherever that community is. So if that's professionally, some years back, I'm thinking I'll go back to maybe 2000, 2001, working for Verizon Communications in White Plains, New York, and I had come to learn that we never even, that the site that I was working at had never celebrated Black History Month formally. So what do you do, right? I mean, and yes, I know, right? 2001, but such was the case. I don't mean that disparagingly. What do? You get busy where you are, right? You get busy working right where you are. And so I'm happy to say I was able to pull together resources, again, back to being a team player, community, and we put on, and I hosted the first ever Black History Month celebration right there in White Plains for Verizon Communications, right? That stuff is important because it means, again, we care about where we are, right? And we care about our community. That really, all of that is the makeup that I bring to the table across the board. Likewise, here living in the city, working with community development, financial institutions, even before taking on the role of in economic development on behalf of the city. I was volunteering here in the city to help build up the business community. It's not lost on me at all that our city is 70% approximately African American and Latin, Latinx, I think is the term, right? So the fact of the matter is that I wanted to make sure that our community, our business community, our ethnic communities, our neighborhoods were healthy, strong, vibrant communities. And then, of course, working with them from an economic development standpoint was a natural transition for me, having such a long, relatively long, 14, 16-year career in business and in finance. And a good friend of mine, Angela, always says, your talent, your time, and your treasure, right? And bring those to the table where you are and in support of your community. And that's really what motivated me. That is exactly what I felt I was doing in the Office of Economic Development for the city. And then, of course, the natural transition for me is kind of a return to some of those early years with the bank in Treasury operations. I'm sure you're very much well aware of exactly what we do as a rhythm to it. And as an operations environment of investing money, moving money, transacting on behalf of the city, being great stewards to the best of our ability on behalf of the citizens of the city and the state. And that's what I try to bring to the table.
The thing that I'm so impressed with is just truly how successful you've been in a variety of different roles, up to this point. Some of those successes are really fantastic. One of the things I wonder is, how have your first 100 days in office been? What are your plans? I mean, I feel as though you've got some big plans because you're not someone who makes small plans. But maybe you can talk a little bit about some of those priorities as city treasurer.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you. I mean, my goodness, I didn't know I was going to receive such compliments coming on onto the show. I need to book
All
me more
true,
often.
though, right? Yeah, right.
I appreciate it. I do work hard. I believe in hard work. I believe in intentionality. I believe in having plans. And of course, further to my points a bit earlier in jest, but really in all seriousness, being a team player. Right? A collaborator at heart is really what I hang my hat on. By no means do I propose to be the smartest guy in every room? In fact, I was raised that if you are the smartest guy in every room, you need to change the room you're in. you know, if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to find another room. And so, for me, that's very important. And you mentioned about successes. Yes, I've been fortunate when I combine hard work meets opportunity. I guess that I'm a lucky guy, and sometimes it's better to be lucky than it is to be smart, right? And so, yes, I've had some successes, and I'm very proud of those. I'm fortunate that things have worked out. They don't always work out the way you might plan them. I think, but part of having a solid plan is having a plan B and a plan C. And plan B and C for me are just another way to make plan A work, right? So I try to stay focused on those things. So high payoff activities is one thing I'll leave with the folks who are here watching, right? HPA. There's in our roles, in particular as leaders, we'll have any number of competing initiatives and agendas, as I'm sure you well know. For me, it's about being able to focus in on those high payoff activities while still not losing, obviously, sight and awareness of, things that may be a little lower on the prioritization list. You still have to know what's going on, but those high payoff activities are those that are really most critical to keeping everything else moving, right? So being able to identify what those are, being able to create a plan around them, being able to create a team around executing on those high payoff activities, and then get busy doing the work, right, and staying focused on it. So generally speaking, I wanted to just lay the framework for you. That's really how I think on any given number of items. I bring that paradigm to the first 100 days, right? And so that's something that we talked about off camera. Though it's very important to me. I wanted to bring that kind of focus to the office. We in the City of Wilmington have been very fortunate to have very stable leadership for a significant period of time. Our former city treasurer, Henry Sapinski, was here in this office for, several decades, right? And he was serving faithfully to the City of Wilmington. And we're very, very much indebted to him for that. He laid a very good groundwork, for where we are now. Taking over for the previous treasurer after the 4 years that she was here, for me, it's really about looking at the big picture in these first 100 days. Priority number one, I refuse to drop the ball, right? What are the priority items? Because here's the thing, we take over this office, but the office keeps rolling. The operation is rolling in full steam ahead, and we're jumping on the train as it's moving, right? and so you better get your feet under you quickly. You have to learn and ask good questions. Of course, I wouldn't be able to do any of this without a solid team. So we were making decisions on personnel right away, right after the primary, and of course, after the general election in November, initiating transition activities. But number one is the train is rolling. We're jumping on as it's moving, and I refuse to drop the ball. Secondarily, from a first 100 days standpoint, we want to do an assessment, right? We spoke again offline, and I tell you all the time, partners, I believe, true partnerships and partners will reveal themselves as the course of our work. Right? So if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, if I'm remaining diligent, and if I'm focused and working hard, my partners will reciprocate that. The true partnerships will reciprocate that. So assessments, right? And it's determining who our partners are, finding out what assets they bring to the table, and then, of course, incorporating that into the larger vision. So that was the second thing. Third is budget. Again, we come into this full steam ahead, right? And so tomorrow I'll be presenting in front of the Economic Development Council, Committee, for City Council, Economic Development Finance. I'm looking forward to it. It's not my first time in front of them, but it will be my first time presenting my budget for what I see as the priorities for fiscal year 2022. I'm really excited about that. So making sure that we address budget, and we want to knock that out of the park. So those were the top three initiatives. One, making sure that no fumbles. Two, assessment of the internal and external partnerships and operations. And number three, making sure that we address I believe is going to be a very transformational and foundational year for the administration with our fiscal year 2022 budget.
Yeah, it's a very similar process in the state, right? And so you're absolutely right. When I think about it, I think there are very critical, operational items that have to continue moving forward. And so when I hear your sort of priorities and your game plan, it makes absolute sense to hone in on the operations and to get that nailed down and to have it continue sort of running as smoothly as possible. How about your vision for the city of Wilmington as city treasurer? What do you hope to accomplish? So sort of thinking about that future goal, and what do you think maybe your greatest challenges or maybe the greatest challenges that the city is facing? And I would love to also just sort of highlight maybe your thoughts on how you think that our offices can work together towards similar goals.
Our jobs as the leaders of these organizations are to set the pace, right? Determine the vision and really set the pace, and then get folks behind that to accomplish our collective goals. I say that because it's important. We're the ones sitting here talking, but we have I'm sure, tremendous staffs behind us who help us get everything done every day. And so I would be remiss if I did not didn't highlight each and every one of those individuals as a collective to achieving anything coming out of this office. So that's first and foremost. Secondarily, the vision I really have for the city of Wilmington through priorities as the lower portion of Newcastle County, your Middletown, anything south of the canal, started to really experience an explosion in growth and residential growth. Many of my peers were part of that explosion, right? I actually went the other way in 95 and Route 1 and moved into the city and planted my flag right here in downtown Wilmington. I believe that this city is well positioned for the future. We have had some great leadership underneath our Mayor Pazicki in the last 4 years, and I do believe he'll continue that over the next 4 years. We have, obviously, like any city, we have our challenges, like any urban environment. We have almost 72,000 residents here. We're going to have our challenges, and those need to be addressed. And our mayor has been very articulate in speaking to those challenges and putting a team together to work towards addressing them. From a treasury standpoint, our job is to manage and invest money. Our job is to be sound stewards, bring good governance, strong judgment, and protect the financial interests of each and every citizen in this city, and obviously for you in our state. Without question, every day, that is my number one priority, right? How do I help our administration? How do I help our city council navigate what are obviously some very difficult and financial times, and to do so as being a sound steward of our finances for what we had, not only what we bring to the table coming into the office in January, but how can I help grow that responsibly? How can I help, bolster our financial position? That is all I think about. And getting our operations in lock, key, and step, and tightening up things that need to be tightened up, adding on things that we maybe could add on, doing away with things that maybe have run its course. That's all par for the course. It all rolls up to that higher agenda and initiative, that number one priority, which is to be a sound steward of the city's funds. That's what I think about every day.
I think that one of the things that truly resonates is that you are a servant, and that is a big part of what drives you, is that sort of servant leader mentality. Yeah. And it definitely resonates. I have to say, I am so excited for the city of Wilmington that they have you as a leader and truly as a steward. I think that in the time that we've had to get to know each other, I really and truly believe that they have a true treasure in their city treasurer. So Treasurer Sims, I just want to say I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate your work and look forward to continuing to get to know you better, but really and truly get to work with you too, because I think that we do. You and I have a strong alignment in our in that servant mentality. So
alignment is the key word, isn't it, Treasurer Davis? You know this from your time, obviously prior to public service. Alignment is important if we're going to execute. And so we need to know what the priorities are, and of course be aligned in those priorities, and then of course put a plan together around executing on that and delivering. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, it's truly been a pleasure and a real gift. Yeah, to take time together. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. And cheers to you and the remainder of the staff over there in the State Treasurer's office. Great team you have there, Treasurer Davis.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.